Okay, what's up guys? Palfish Paul, aka Palfish Pablo, aka Irish Paul, here with a new Palfish vlog. Oh, and apropos of absolutely nothing, here's a picture of me at 8 years old looking for Fungi the dolphin down in Dingle Kerry with my two brothers and two cousins. That's me in the middle, yeah, with the big smiley face. So, for today's video, I'm going to be discussing Chinese culture and history and the importance of knowing it and understanding it as an English second language teacher to Chinese people, which is what 99% of us online English teachers are. Some teach to South America, to Eastern Europe, the Middle East even. However, with Palfish, and I would say the large majority of these companies, you are teaching to Chinese people. So, as I've pointed out on several videos already, it's up to you as an English teacher to Chinese people to clue yourself up on the history and culture, to know a little bit about it, not only just for your personal growth, but also to help you as a teacher. So, I've said it, like, I liken it to taking a PhD in Chinese studies. So, in the 2.5 years or so that I've been with Palfish, I've learned so much about its history, geography, culture and language, and yeah, I'm very happy with that, and it's given me a whole different perspective and viewing of Chinese culture, of course, compared to before I started. So why am I talking about all this? It's because currently, anti-Asian sentiment and discrimination is, I wouldn't say at an all-time high, because you're going to learn a lot about the history of it later in this video, but it's currently at a bad point, all right? It's been heightened and exacerbated by the coronavirus situation due to the speculation that it may have originated in the Wuhan lab of virology. We don't know whether or not that's true yet. Even if it were to be proven to be true, that is no reason to ad hominem individually discriminate against Chinese people or the society as a whole. It has nothing to do with a man up in Xinjiang or a woman in Sichuan. It would be a case to take up with the Chinese Communist Party, right? Nothing to do with Chinese people as a race or as a culture. Let's get that perfectly clear, yeah? So, it really was brought to a head just how much Chinese people are currently, being discriminated when this comedian Tony Hinchcliffe came up on stage in Austin, Texas last week and thought it would be funny and that he would get away with labeling and describing his fellow Chinese comic as a filthy little Chink.
Good evening, welcome, hello. How about one more time for the filthy little fucking chink that was just up here? All you fucking race traders are hooping and hollering. I'm back there watching you puking in a fucking bucket. Oh, we making a gunpowder. Oh, you want extra soy sauce. Oh, you borrow money from us. And you guys just eating it up, you fucking pussies. Look at you fucking fake bitches in this room. I don't even want to make you guys laugh. I don't even like you anymore. These fucking Chinese people, they find out we have flying bats every night, and here they come. Ooh, flying soup.
I get it. He was supposed to be funny. He had a microphone, he was up on stage and he was doing a bit. None of that makes it acceptable. I know about comedy. I've loved it since I was a kid. I know what a good stand-up comic and a shock comic is about. This wasn't it. This was just baseline, race-baiting, low-hanging fruit, racial slurs, all right? And this word, Chink, is not as benign or harmless as you might think, right? So if you grew up in Ireland in the 90s like I did, or in England, the UK, Scotland, Wales, USA, I'm sure you heard this word bandied about on the playground, right? I certainly heard it. It was, you heard it to describe Asian people. Childish playground jokes. Talking about the mid-90s here, right? Talking about children using that joke back then. A totally different time. We're in 2021 now. It's a different time, a time of much greater globalization and miscegenation and integration of all different cultures and ways of life and ethnicities, all right? So those racial slurs like chink and spik, and of course the most loaded and worstly connoted of them all, the N-word, which was used to really discriminate and denigrate African American and black people throughout the history of slavery in the US. Well, I think I lost the train of that sentence, but the point is that they never were cool, but they're no longer acceptable at all or tolerable at all in today's society. It doesn't matter if you're up on stage with a mic in some comedy setting or among friends or in any setting. It's just not cool, believe me. Like, you're going to see why in the second part of this video, why the word chink has a very loaded and violent history. All right, it's not just a simple joke to laugh at Chinese people because they look different or because they, like the first Chinese people who came to America had the Manchu ponytail hairstyle. It's not only about that. It was really used to make sure they were kept down and make sure they were ghettoized. That's why they had to build Chinatowns and make sure that they weren't paid as much as the white people. All of these socio-cultural reasons, right? So, yeah, there you go. That's the opening gambit here, that as an English teacher to Chinese people and a citizen of the world, regardless, if you're just coming in here and you don't teach English, and it's important for you to know about the history of anti-Asian hate and why it needs to be eradicated, and we need to get way past that and understand modern China. Like, regardless of racial slurs, right, it is amazing to me still just how misunderstood China is. Like, say my mother, for example, absolutely love my mom to bits, she's amazing, but sometimes she'll make a funny naive remark about China, like say when I tell her that I've got a couple of new students who are paying me a nice amount for my package that I sell on Palfish, and she'll say something like, oh yeah, so they've got a good bit of money, and you know, the implication being, oh, she's surprised, almost as if she thinks most Chinese people might still live in rice paddy villages. Now, she's never said that. I'm not trying to say anything bad about my mother, but a lot of people would have these misperceptions about China, I think it's fair to say. And I just think it's time we caught up with modern China and started respecting the culture and understanding the culture. 2.0 or 3.0, you might even call it, or 4.0, whatever way you want to look at it in historical terms. All right, so I've learned a lot about Chinese history. So the current wave of anti-Asian sentiment sweeping the US and Canada, all of North America, isn't just in a vacuum. It hasn't just sprung out from the China virus rhetoric spouted by Trump. No, this goes way back. This dates way back to the mid-1800s when Chinese migrants were brought over to build the transcontinental railways in San Francisco, building West Coast to East Coast, in which they were discriminated against, underpaid, underfed when they went on strike. Their food supplies were cut off by the tycoons until they nearly starved. And then once the strike was resolved and the railways were all built, the Chinese were essentially expelled from the US with the Chinese Exclusion Act, 1882, which lasted for 60 years. Chinese people were officially ruled out and excluded from American society in what is quite possibly the most egregious and blatant act of governmental xenophobia in modern history. So if you talk about Trump's wall against to keep out the Mexicans, or obviously some of the horrible stuff that happened in the 20th century, Hitler and the Holocaust and all that. I'm not equating an exclusion act on Chinese people to that, but it predates that. It was a specific act against one ethnic group of people and a nationality, in this case the Chinese, in 1882. 60 years, Chinese were excluded after building the railways, in which they were underpaid and terribly discriminated against. Interspersed in all of that, there was lots of anti-Asian attacks. There was constant propaganda against them. There were attacks. There were lynchings. Talk about the black lynchings which took place in the Jim Crow era. There was a lynching in 1871 in Los Angeles, California, in which 19 Chinese immigrants were killed, hung, murdered, in what has been described by some sources as one of the worst mass lynchings in the history of the USA. So there you go. Some relevant context, like I'm sorry, hashtag not sorry, that is very important because it's not well known and not well reported on in modern times. Completely swept under the rug, and the plight of black people in America is the story which comes to the forefront, which is the one that's way more discussed about for obvious reasons, because the black population was the one that was formally enslaved, formally taken from Africa, and in a very official way enslaved to build America by the white man. And they're the much more populous minority group compared to Asians, and it's only natural that the black story is the one which is most told. But the story of the Asian in America has been also one of severe discrimination and hate, anti-Asian hatred and sentiment on at a governmental level, and also in a societal level. It's persisted. So there's a legacy there, all right? It's just like slavery. When slavery was abolished, it's not like that's the end of slavery now. If you watch the 13th documentary, as soon as slavery was finished, they immediately made a new law which said that, okay, we can actually allow slavery when someone's put into prison. So what did they do? They came up with all sorts of mad, batshit lies that the Negro, the black man, was raping white women and taking loads of cocaine and doing all this stuff, put them into prison, and then they couldn't enslave them again. So, by the same token, when the Chinese Exclusion Act was lifted in the 1940s, didn't just put, I can't even click my fingers today, didn't put an end to anti-Asian sentiment. There's a legacy, there's a heritage there which has been put into society, and that lasts and that continues through generations. So when Trump is talking about the China virus, he's invoking that anti-Asian hatred and discrimination which has existed for over 150 years. It could even go back way further. There has to be a starting point for the purpose of this video. Probably goes back even further than that. And even the voice that Tony's affecting there, it's so archaic and retrograde. Oh, me want more soy sauce, me China man. It's that unbelievably outdated stereotype of the primitive Chinaman. You know, the Chinese migrants who came over, this was during the Chink dynasty, when they had the Q ponytail haircut, when they used to wear these hats, and when their level of English must have been so limited. Their food customs must have been even more exotic than what they are now. This is way back before they would have even been getting into Western cuisine and things like that. So you can only imagine the treatment and the harassment that those Chinese laborers had to go through with their hairstyle. A lot of the right-wing propaganda magazines show their hair being pulled and their buck teeth and all of these really caricatured physical traits, right? So all of that is so important in the context of this guy being up there on stage in 2021, speaking like that and thinking he can get away with it just because I'm just introducing a docile little Chinaman. Incredible that he thought this would just be this is just an offensive joke that's going to kind of skirt around the edges and be borderline. It's not borderline, it's just, it can't be accepted. It can't be tolerated in the context of the way Chinese people have been discriminated against all the way up to today. Of course, plug for myself as a mentor on Palfish. If you'd like to get started on Palfish and try online teaching from your phone, from anywhere in the world, then you just click the link in the description below and I become your mentor. I help you pass the interview, and hey presto, you're an online English teacher from your phone. All right, cheers guys.